Yo, it's your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, back at you with a new video. Today is Monday, January 12th, 2026, with your boy Ryan and the Northwest Sports Fanatics. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, smash that like button either now or on your way out. Donate to your boy if you can. Cash App, $ ORIONNWSF, or the YouTube Super Chat right here. We got the AFC wildcard playoffs, the Houston Texans versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kickoff is going to be here in about a minute or two. So let's cue up the music, take a look at the thumb, and let's get settled in for some Monday Night Football. Happy Monday, everyone. On the left, studs at quarterback, C.J. Stroud, and on the right, the OG vet, Aaron Rodgers. Should be a fantastic game. That wild card weekend wrapping up here on Monday night, and we'll definitely see how this one will play out momentarily. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. We'll be shooting for 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. C.J. Stroud, Woody Marks, Nico Collins, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Warren, DK Metcalf, TJ Watt, and you know that the stars are going to be out here today. Dark Passenger in the building, what's good? Daniel in the building, what's good? And we're just about settled in here for the start of the Houston Texans, 12-5, 5-3 on the road versus the 10-7, 6-3 at home Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh is undefeated at home on Monday Night Football, and the Houston Texans have not won a playoff road game in their team's existence. So someone is going to win here today and break one of the curses, and we will find out if Pittsburgh can still stay undefeated at home on Monday night, or if Houston will get its first win on the road in the playoffs. And C.J. Stroud definitely is hungry. Marine Bean in the building. What's good? National anthem was done on the highest level. And again, you know, when you see the national anthem done at sporting events, you know, it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes it ends up being good, sometimes not so much. But that young lady did a great job and definitely got the energy going in the building. And that's going to be a touchback here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me get everything refreshed. And Kaimi Barron with a 65-yard kick into the landing zone. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 20. Here we go. Hand off to Jalen Warren, bouncing off that left side, off the guard, breaking one tackle and another. And Kamari Lassiter with the tackle, but not after. A big first down for the Steelers. Great job by Jalen Warren setting the tone early and often. Nice 10-yard run right out of the gates. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 30. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Shotgun set. Trips right. And Rodgers, short right to DK Metcalf. And nice yak yards there after the play on the screen. And that's 17 yards. First down, Steelers. Move the chains. Good start here for Pittsburgh at home. You know, we already feel that the Texans are the better team. You know, they definitely have one of the best defenses in the entire league with the Denver Broncos. But again, we don't really know what you're going to get out of the Houston offense on the road with CJ Stroud, Woody Marks, and Nico Collins. And again, you have to assume that Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Warren, DK Metcalf will be able to match the production on offense that you're going to get from Houston and possibly do maybe a little bit better, just because they are at home. Jalen Warren up the middle and gaining about a yard there. Derek Stingley Jr., the Texans corner, with a beautiful tackle. 2nd down and 9 at the Pittsburgh 48. Sheldon Rankins, Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter. They got some dogs out there. Azeez Al-Shaair, Pro Bowler this season. And Derek Stingley Jr., a All-Pro as well. So, again, the defense got a lot of individuals that can come up and make plays, and it's not just about the D-line. Linebacking core and secondary are very, very good as well. Shotgun set. And Rodgers hands off to Jalen Warren up the middle. Gains about 2 yards. Tommy Tagai there with the tackle. 3rd down and 7 at the 50. All right, Togi, I see you. See what Arthur Smith has in his bag here for Aaron Rodgers, the previous Falcons head coach in 2021 to 2023. Hopefully we don't have any major injuries in the matchup. I know we're going to have a few minor ones throughout the game. And just as I say that, looks like we have a little bit of a hiccup here on the Texan defense. It looks like Reed is a little bit shaken up. Hopefully he's okay. Trainer's looking over him right now. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Hopefully Jalen Reed, the rookie from Penn State, will be okay. All right, Miles Bryant comes in and will fill in for at least a snap or two. 3rd down and 7 at the 50, 12:48 left in the first quarter. And obviously that's ticking down to now 12:20 and counting. Shotgun set. Rodgers going short right to Kenneth Gainwell, the former Eagle, incomplete. 4th down and 7 at the 50. That drive stalls after a beautiful 10-yard run to start off the game with Jalen Warren and a big 17-yard pass to DK Metcalf. But again, it's better for Rodgers to throw it away, rather than, throw it into double coverage or, to take a big sack. But again, it's not going to be often that you're going to be able to march all the way down the field on the Houston Texans and get points. And again, Rodgers is frustrated. Obviously, the wrong route was run by Kenneth Gainwell, but I'm not sure if he would have even been able to get the first down. If he would have caught it, looks like he would have been still a couple yards short. Corliss Waitman there with the punt. And a good punt at best. And that's going to be fair caught there by Jalen Noel, the Houston Texan wide receiver. 1st down and 10 at the Houston 10 for CJ Stroud. And, this is one of the teams that you assume if they win this game, they're going to have a good chance against the New England Patriots. And we got the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos. That's going to be very, very sexy. Could be either team coming out with a victory in either of those matchups. And then obviously we know we're going to have the Bears and the Rams. Obviously you would assume it edge to the Rams. And then you got the Seahawks and the Niners. Edge to the Seahawks being at home, obviously with no George Kittle. But with that being said, if the Bears play well, same thing goes with the Niners. It's possible that they could end up coming up with the upset, but it definitely feels like it's going to be Seahawks Rams in the NFC Championship game. And then again, if the Texans win here today, your guess is as good as mine. Obviously, the Patriots are the most well-rounded, but the Texans got in a great defense, and I think that would be a very competitive game between the Texans and the Patriots. And I guess if you were looking at the game on the outside looking in, maybe a slight edge to the Patriots, just by a little bit. But again, if that Texan D-line with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. play great, and CJ Stroud is able to, do his thing, they definitely have a chance to steal that game. And the same thing goes with the Buffalo Bills going against the Denver Broncos. Broncos are at home, but we know the defense is elite. Bo Nix doesn't really play that that well, and that offense doesn't really play that well in the first 3 quarters, but in the fourth quarter, they're lights out. So kind of like the Chicago Bears, they kind of wait until their backs are against the wall, and then they play their best ball, typically late in games. And then you got Josh Allen, you got Cook, so you got the best quarterback, one of the top running backs, you got one of the best secondaries. Really the only problem with the Bills is the run defense. But again, with the matchup and the running backs that the rest of the teams have in the AFC, it shouldn't be that much of an issue unless we're talking about New England versus Buffalo. Then you have Travion Henderson that we saw last night and Ramondre Stevenson. But it definitely is going to be something very, very special. Could end up being the Patriots and the Bills, the Rams and the Seahawks. But again, the other teams that are in, as long as you're in, you have a chance. And again, we're starting to really, get rid of the pretenders, and we're sticking with the contenders. Let's see what Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Woody Marks, and the rest can do here on the drive. Otto in the building. What's good? Terrible towels are out. And again, I love the energy. Steeler fans are, pretty intelligent as far as football terms, very passionate. Again, they haven't really had a Super Bowl contending team in a minute, but again, they are very happy to be there into the playoffs at the moment. Handoff up the middle to Woody Marks. A nice 5-yard run. T.J. Watt and Harmon coming in there for the tackle. 9-5 record for C.J. Stroud, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks, having some injuries this year. And obviously you would assume if he played more games, how many more wins would the Texans have gotten at that point? Backups have played pretty well for them in the 2025-2026 season. 2nd down and 5 at the Houston 15. C.J. Stroud trying to get it in, trying to thread the needle. And again, you got to be very careful. Wide receiver is down, Nico Collins. And again, you don't want to throw your receiver into danger on the second play of the game. And again, Joey Porter Jr. right there, tries to get him a jam on the line. And again, gets sandwiched in between 2 Steelers. And they are very, very lucky and blessed that didn't go up in the air for an interception like we saw with Trevor Lawrence against the Buffalo Bills at the end of the game. Dalton Schultz had a chance at it as well. But again, they are lucky that's not an interception. And now Nico goes to the bench, and that is not good for the Texans. That's more pressure on C.J. Stroud. 3rd down and 5 at the Houston 15. Let's see if the Steelers bring blitz. Shotgun set. They bring 4. C.J. steps up in the pocket. Floater. He's got a man downfield. Oh, my. 1st down. Christian Kirk. Move the chains. What a beautiful touch throw by C.J. Stroud. Wow. And again, those are the type of throws that we were used to seeing in his beautiful rookie year. Kind of had a sophomore slump, which a lot of quarterbacks do after having a great rookie year. There's 1 year of tape. And obviously this year he's been a little banged up. But again, when CJ is healthy, he is one of the top 10 quarterbacks in this league. And again, a beautiful 36-yard pass. C.J. Stroud to Christian Kirk, Eccles and Clark with the coverage. 1st down, Texans. And if they can come up with plays like that, they can definitely win this game. As Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr. and that defense are going to do their job. Hand off to Nick Chubb, the former Cleveland Brown, who's had ACL tears in both the knees and has had a crazy career. But great to be able to see him out there with a nice 2-yard run. 2nd down and 8 at the Pittsburgh 47. Like, what could have been for Nick Chubb if he didn't have all of those injuries? Legacy would definitely be on another tier. Definitely an exciting back in his prime. Nico Collins still on the sideline. Not good. Shotgun set. And they decide to go to Woody Marks on that left side. And gets jammed up in the middle by Cameron Hayward and T.J. Watt. Big stop there by the Steeler defense. 3rd down and 6 at the Pittsburgh 45. Nico Collins coming back in, and again, he is typically one of the main targets on 3rd down, like Dalton Schultz. And again, I like this Texans team. Again, I feel they're pretty balanced on offense and defense, and they're starting to play their best ball at the right time of the year. Denver's got a good defense, but a shaky offense. New England is good at offense, defense, and special teams. So when you're looking at this, and the Buffalo Bills are good at offense and defense besides stopping the run. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see how the AFC plays out. Whistle is blown on 3rd down and 6, and that might be false start on the O-line there for the Texans. Wow, they got the timeout off. Wow. First timeout for the Houston Texans. I was assuming that was going to be illegal motion or false start, but again, 3rd down and 6 will be much better than 3rd down and 11. Derek Harmon from the Ducks up front with Cameron Hayward. TJ Watt, Patrick Queen, the former Raven, in there as well with Alex Highsmith and Peyton Wilson. Asante Samuel Jr., the former Charger from Florida State. Jalen Ramsey, Porter, and Duggar. Big 3rd down here for the Houston Texans. And let's see if they can move the ball on the road on this 3rd down. False start. Flag comes out. Come on, Houston. You can't be having these self-inflicted wounds if you're going to win on the road. And that's going to be on Trent Brown, I believe, the tackle, number 77. 3rd down and 11 at the 50. TJ in the building. What's good? Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Yeah, I was about to say that as well. I mean, the guard is jumping on almost every play, and it maybe could have been already called on another play or two, in this game already. Shotgun set, 3rd down and 11. CJ Stroud steps up, but there's just nothing there. Intended receiver was Christian Kirk. And again, you have to assume that both of these teams, are going to be blitzing on 3rd down more times than not. Especially when you got guys like TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward, Patrick Queen, guys that that can make plays on that side of the ball. And then Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr. up front with a lot of other amazing players at that linebacker position as well as the secondary. So it's going to be a defensive battle. There's no doubt about that. Could end up being a little bit of a lower scoring game like yesterday's game, but hopefully it'll be decided in the 4th quarter. And if we're really lucky, maybe the last play of the game. 4th down and 11, the Texans punt. And wobbly punt there by Tommy Townsend, the former Kansas City Chief. And that's going to go out, and they're going to place it, I believe, around the 28-yard line. 1st down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 28. But even though I do think this is going to be a defensive battle, kind of like the Chargers-Patriot game yesterday, I do think that you are going to get some, big plays. You're going to get touchdowns on the offense, and, if we're lucky, we might even be able to get a touchdown on the defense with a pick six, a fumble for a touchdown, or maybe even a special teams touchdown tonight. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Now we'll see what Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Warren, DK Metcalf, TJ Watt will end up doing here on this game. DJ Stroud, Woody Marks, Nico Collins will have to monitor that minor hiccup that he had, obviously getting sandwiched on that second play of the game. Hopefully he'll be okay, because if they're going to win the game, they're going to need Nico Collins. And then again, my favorite guys on the D-line this year with Will Anderson Jr. there on the left and Danielle Hunter on the right. These guys, if you look at a lot of the photos, it's pretty rare to have a photo with just one of them in it. Most of the time, it's going to be both of them celebrating in there for sack lunches. And this is the only duo in the NFL that have more than 10 sacks each on the same team. So again, if there's a defense that can change the outcome of a game besides the Denver Broncos, it's definitely this Houston Texan defense this year. All right, next possession here for Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see what Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. have cooking in their bag, and we'll see if Aaron Rodgers can move the ball down the field on this drive and get them some points. But won't be shocked if, we end up having a pretty low-scoring first half, and I assume the second half, the game will open up a little bit. 12-5 Houston Texans, even though C.J. Stroud missed a quarter of the season. 10-7 Pittsburgh Steelers. Rodgers, short middle to DK Metcalf, going to the left side now. A nice crossing route. And good yak yards there from DK. He is a factor here today. First down, Steelers. 25-yard pass from Aaron Rodgers to DK Metcalf. First down, Steelers. Move the chains. First down and 10 at the Houston 47. And you've seen DK come up with a 17-yard grab and a 25-yard grab here early in the first quarter. And obviously that is a good sign for Steeler fans, knowing that he's going to be a factor here today. Man in motion. Shotgun set for Rodgers. Pressure. Floater. And intended receiver DK Metcalf, and the yellow comes out. Flag on the play. And that should be PI on Kamari Lassiter, the corner. Automatic first down, Steelers. 14-yard penalty. That's going to be first down and 10 at the Houston 33. Eight minutes and 10 seconds left in the first quarter in a defensive battle and a defensive struggle here early. First down and 10 at the Houston 33 after that DPI, defensive pass interference on Kamari Lassiter on DK Metcalf. Rodgers under center, hands off to Gainwell up the middle. Nice cutback. And that's going to be a 6-yard gain. Second down and 4 at the Houston 27. Tommy Togai there with the tackle. And when you get these, muscular, big wide receivers like DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown, again, divas to say the least, but you want them to be able to come up with some big plays. And obviously, A.J. Brown did not. And so far, DK here today definitely is trying to do something for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Second down and 4. Handoff. Cut back. Wow, Kenneth Gainwell. Nice shiftiness by him. First down, Steelers. First down and 10 at the Houston 21. Nice 6-yard run by the former Eagle, Kenneth Gainwell. And now they're knocking on the door. Field goal range, absolutely. And again, we'll see what kind of play calling that they can get. And we might be able to see them in the end zone here momentarily. And you got Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith. So, you got some other tight ends that can come up with some big plays as well. Rodgers going deep to Jonnu Smith, and complete for the former Tennessee Titan. Miles Bryant with the coverage. Second down and 10 at the Houston 21. Shotgun set. Rodgers going deep to Calvin Austin, the third, incomplete. Really trying to go deep and bait those corners and safeties for the Texans. Third down and 10 at the Houston 21. And now we'll see if the Texans bring blitz on third down. Rodgers, for being an old man, he can still sling it. He doesn't have a noodle arm at this point in his career. He still can sling the football at a decent rate. And again, he knows that he's going to have to, because they are so fast up front with Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., and that defensive line. He's not going to be able to sit in the pocket that long. And if he wants to make sure he completes this game, he's got to get rid of the football very, very quickly. 5 wide receiver set. No back. Shotgun set for Rodgers. Texans defense brings 4, little check down, and good defense there. Nice catch by Marquez Valdez-Scantling, MVS, the former Kansas City Chief, with a 7-yard catch, but that's going to be a 3 yards short of the first down marker, I believe. Looks like it's going to be 4th down and 3 at the Houston 14. Kick is up, and it's good. Nice kick there by Chris Boswell, and now 3-0 Pittsburgh. That was a good drive, against a very elite defense. We know the Texans and Bronco defense are the best in the NFL this season for the most part. And again, they were moving the football at a pretty good rate. Pittsburgh's offensive line has actually done a pretty good job against that elite D-line, probably the best in the NFL. We'll see if that'll continue throughout all 4 quarters, but at least early on, Steeler O-line doing a good job. 6:02 left in the first quarter, 3-0 Pittsburgh. $18 subs away from 23,400. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. 6:02 left in the first quarter, 3-0 Pittsburgh. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Three for 6 for 49 yards for Aaron Rodgers. CJ Stroud 1 for 3 with that deep 36-yard pass early in the matchup. Not a whole lot of rushing yards just yet. Woody Marks with 7 and Jalen Warren with 13. And then obviously receiving leaders so far early, since we had that little minor injury from Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, that 36-yard reception, and then DK Metcalf with 2 receptions totaling 42 yards and definitely pacing for over 100 if they keep continuing to feed him the rock. Steelers about to kick off after converting the field goal by 32 yards by reliable Chris Boswell. And a decent return there for the Houston Texans by Jalen Noel. Boswell kicked 60 yards and about 20 to 21 yard return there by Jalen Noel. First down and 10 at the Houston 26. Let's see what CJ Stroud has cooking in his bag on this next drive. And definitely you want to keep pace with Pittsburgh. You don't want to be down by too much going into the third and fourth quarter. Shotgun set. CJ Stroud short middle to Nico Collins. 4-yard pass. Second down and 6 at the Houston 30. And obviously they, need better running backs than Woody Marks or Nick Chubb, but again, those guys have been decent, in 2025 going into the 2026 season, but getting a little bit more depth at that position could obviously help them quite a bit. Woody Marks up the middle. And Woody is underrated. He can get the job done. They are, putting him in that position because he has earned that spot. Nice 5-yard run up the middle. He may not be Arian Foster, but again, he does the right job most of the time. 3rd down and 1 at the Houston 35. Might as well give him the ball again here right up the middle, and you'll get that 1st down. And I do like Joe Mixon a lot, but it seems like he's been getting injured quite a bit after leaving Cincinnati. And again, if he's healthy for a full season, then you don't really need to worry about him, Marks, and Chubb. And eventually Chubb will, be a 3rd string, running back or out of the league at some point if it's not on the Texans. Nice run there to Woody Marks, bouncing it off that right tackle for a 2-yard gain. 1st down, Texans. Move the chains. TJ Watt there with the tackle. And Woody has been a very good, underrated 4th-round pick in the draft. And off to Woody Marks again. Off that right tackle for 3 yards, Patrick Queen, the former Raven, with the tackle. 2nd down and 7 at the Houston 40. Less than 4 minutes to go here in the first quarter. 3-0 Steelers with a Chris Boswell 32-yard field goal. Joey Porter Jr., 1,467 consecutive coverage snaps without allowing a TD, longest streak by a corner in the NFL. That is impressive. They've had guys, Minkah Fitzpatrick and others, that have been very dominant in that secondary over the years as well. Screen pass to Nico Collins, not getting a whole lot. Herbig was the first there for the Steelers. 3rd down and 3 at the Houston 44. And I don't mind the Texans being, kind of, predictable with some of their play calls, running it up the middle with Woody Marks, little screen passes here and there. But they are going to have to be able to mix in, some deep passes and some play action to be able to win this game. Shotgun set, Stroud, short middle to Xavier Hutchinson. There we go, on cue. 1st down, Texans. That's what I'm talking about, baby. That's how you make a team pay. CJ Stroud to Xavier Hutchinson. Clark and Pierre with the coverage and the tackle. 1st down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 40. And it's about having a good balanced offense. And I think the Texans, when they're healthy and CJ Stroud is out there, even with no Joe Mixon, they got enough capable pieces with Dalton Schultz at tight end, Woody Marks and Nick Chubb at running back, and then obviously a plethora of wide receivers with Nico Collins, Xavier Hutchinson, Christian Kirk, and company, to get in the end zone and score points. Pretty good start here for CJ Stroud on the road, and the Texans have not won a road playoff game in their history. Flea flicker, CJ steps up, ball comes out, and is that intercepted? And Pittsburgh with the turnover. Wow. Unbelievable. And again, CJ has to understand that the pressure is going to be coming up the middle, and you got to get rid of the football or take the sack. And if you hang that, football out there loose in the air in front of you, someone's going to end up knocking it out of your hands or it's going to come out. Very unfortunate play here from CJ Stroud. And again, gets hit from behind, ball gets loose, great awareness by the Steelers, and then a big interception by that Pittsburgh defense. And again, that's going to be the story of the day. The Pittsburgh defense versus the Texan offense. Who's going to be better, on each side of the ball, and that will determine the outcome of this game, because you have to assume, the Steelers offense, it's not the greatest, but when they're at home, they definitely feed off the crowd. And then that Texan defense, we know that D-line is the best in the NFL. But right now, Pittsburgh with all the momentum, 3-0 Steelers. And you don't really see CJ Stroud make plays like that often, but you just got to give credit to the Pittsburgh defense. I mean, he kind of got caught from behind, didn't really fully see him until it was about a fraction of a second too late. Ball comes loose as he's throwing forward. And again, got to have better peripherals, especially when you got TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward coming after you. Just like on the opposite side, Aaron Rodgers has to keep his head on a swivel for Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter. And so far, the Pittsburgh offense and defense have been doing a better job here early on. 2:02 left in the first quarter, 3-0 Steelers. Tyler in the building, what's good? Well, Steelers are undefeated on Monday Night Football. They have 20-plus wins in their history. They've never lost. And the Texans have not won a playoff game on the road. Somewhere 0-8, 0-9, somewhere in that time frame. I saw a stat on socials earlier this morning. So some records, are meant to be broken. And we'll find out if the Texans can get enough out of their offense to win this game. I think coming into the game, the Texans, were a slight favorite, based on what they've been able to do defensively. But history sometimes tends to repeat itself. But again, early in this game, even if the Texans were slightly favored coming into the game, so far in the first quarter, Pittsburgh looking like the better team. Wow, they've only lost 3 fumbles all year, so that's why that was a little shocking. But again, you got to give credit to that Pittsburgh defense. Jack Sawyer, we know how good Sawyer was in college, carrying over here in the NFL. Hand off to Jalen Warren and getting stuffed there at the line. Great defense there by that Houston Texan D-line that we know that is one of the best in the NFL. Petrie and Anderson there with the stuff. 2nd down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 44. Yeah, and again, doing the flea flicker was a little bit too cute. Again, they should have just ran a normal play, and obviously they were looking for, burning the defense on that back end and whatnot. But again, you also have to respect, that they do got some speed out there in TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward. So again, if they didn't run the flea flicker, maybe that turnover doesn't happen. And again, it is not really you have to be very selective when you're going to be going for some of those trick plays. Shotgun set, Rodgers looking for DK Metcalf towards the sideline and dropped. What happened to my hands? DK has been very productive in this game with 2 big grabs. Could have had a third, and that's a big drop there for the Steeler offense. 3rd down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 44. But the good thing about Rodgers, he's not going to fade DK Metcalf. He'll continue to go to him to have him make up for any kind of mistakes or drops throughout the game. Got about a minute left here in the first quarter. 3-0 Pittsburgh. Shotgun set. Rodgers looking at MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and connects with him, but short of the marker, and they look like they're about 5 or 6 yards short. They're going to mark it at the 49, 4th down and 5, and again, another punt for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it will be interesting to see at some point in the game if it ends up being 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3, 4th and 4, 4th and 5, and they're on the 50-yard line. At some point, you would have to assume they love their defense in Pittsburgh, but at some point, you have to give Rodgers the green light to go for it, maybe in the second half. I wouldn't be going for it in the first half, but in the second half, if it's that same scenario where you're in the 3rd or 4th quarter and the game is close, those are the times that you can take a chance, and it may end up helping the team win. Corliss Waitman, the punt, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jalen Noel there with a 1-yard return, and they're backed up into their own end zone here. First down and 10 at the Houston 8 for C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, short right to Cade Stover, the other tight end. And Duggar there with the tackle. Second down and 2 at the Houston 16. And that's going to be the end of the first quarter, 3-0 Pittsburgh. I anticipated it being a defensive battle. I'm not really surprised, on the score itself. But definitely Pittsburgh is feeding off the crowd. And so far, they've been the better team offensively and defensively, as well as play calling and execution as well. But that's not to say that, C.J. Stroud at some point, can go deep to guys like Nico Collins and light it up. But again, if the Texans are going to be able to win this game, it's got to be more than just the amazing defensive, line up front. They're going to need the offense to help them out and score, maybe trying to think about how many they probably would have to get to at least 20, to win this game. I think if you score less than 20, you're not winning this game if you're Houston. Highly unlikely it's going to be, 17-13. I guess it could potentially be that, but I assume that we're going to get more scoring in the second half, and hopefully we get some more field goals and touchdowns here in the second quarter. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Only need 18 subs to get to 23,400. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you continue to do what you've been doing all year. You try to run the football, play good defense, and then let Rodgers, do what he does best, improvise and hopefully get a good connection with the tight ends and the receivers. And again, a couple missed throws. But again, most of the throws from Rodgers have been on. You had the one drop by DK Metcalf, but 2 big catches to be able to get him some good field position in the game. And again, it is going to be one in the trenches. But so far early on, Pittsburgh looking like the better team. Texans would have a better chance of beating New England than Pittsburgh would, though, if we end up getting, Pittsburgh winning this particular matchup. Yeah, I've been following it. He went for his 6th year of eligibility and whatnot, and obviously they denied him and whatnot. But we'll kind of wait and see how it all plays out. And then you got the Patrick Mahomes clone, Raiola, the Nebraska quarterback that ended up committing to Oregon to be Dante Moore's backup or starter, depending on what Dante does. So there's going to be some college football news out there. Shotgun set, fumbled in the snap, C.J. Stroud, and throws it away. Lucky that they were able to pick that up. Self-inflicted wound there by the Houston Texan offense. And again, they definitely look nervous and sloppy here early. CJ, you got to be better. But luckily, after the fumble, he got a good bounce and was able to throw that one incomplete. Now, but if it's happening in the sport world, wrestling world, anything that's going on, UFC, boxing, wrestling, basketball, baseball, football, hockey, World Baseball Classic, you name it, I'm on it. So shotgun set, CJ Stroud going to Christian Kirk towards the sideline, gaining about 4 yards. Eccles there first for the Steelers with the tackle. First down and 10 at the Houston 20. Move the chains. NASCAR is supposed to come out with a decision on how they're going to end up doing their points for their championship. Obviously, supposed to come out with some of that information earlier today or later today. So interested to read about that later on. And we'll end up doing some streams for basketball, hockey, NASCAR, WWE as filler streams as we wait for the World Baseball Classic and the MLB regular season. CJ Stroud with the play action, looking for Dalton Schultz with the floater towards the sideline, incomplete. Asante Samuel Jr. with the coverage, 2nd down and 10 at the Houston 20. Yeah, Trinidad Chambliss played pretty well, in the college football run that they had. But again, certain guys, need to come back to college like Dante Moore. Again, there's not very many guys that have less than 20 starts that actually have panned out in the NFL, besides Cam Newton and maybe Ryan Tannehill. But a lot of the others ended up being underachievers or flopping, like Anthony Richardson. So it's better to go back to college and, to be able to get more, games under your belt. And it definitely ends up, helping your progression and being more NFL ready. Shotgun set, CJ Stroud going to Nico Collins in that short middle, and that is caught. 1st down, Texans. Nice 13-yard pass from Stroud to Collins. Joey Porter Jr. with the coverage and the tackle. 1st down and 10 at the Houston 33. Well, we have to be able to see on how many quarterbacks are coming out, but I don't think he would be top 10. Really the only thing that for sure is Fernando Mendoza is going number 1 overall. But beyond that, we don't really know, on how many quarterbacks that actually could be starters in the NFL. And even with, Fernando Mendoza coming out, if you got bad coaching, bad play calling, bad O-line, you can't expect him to play the same way that he's been playing at Indiana. So, he's going to have a rude awakening when he goes there. He'll put more butts in the seats, but it kind of feels like a very light quarterback class. And there's going to be a lot of offensive linemen, defensive linemen, running backs, receivers, secondary that are going to fill in the top 10. So handoff up the middle. And nowhere to go there. Big tackle. Nick Herbig, the linebacker there first. 1-yard run there from Woody Marks. 3rd down and 3 at the Houston 40. But it kind of feels like the quarterback class, even if Dante Moore would have beaten Indiana and then he would have ended up going number 2 in the draft, I still think it's a pretty weak quarterback class overall. I mean, will there be someone that ends up playing well, depending on the team that they get drafted to? It's possible, but it doesn't really feel like some of the other previous drafts that have maybe been a little bit better. Shotgun set, Stroud, short middle, Dalton Schultz, his favorite tight end. Nice catch there, a little low on the throw. Eccles there with the coverage. 1st down, Texans, move the chains. And Houston needs to be able to get points on the board. And they don't necessarily need a lot of touchdowns in the first half, but you want to make sure you're keeping pace with Pittsburgh. And the closer that you can be, that's going to be less pressure and stress on CJ Stroud in the offense late in the second half. Less than 12 minutes to go here before halftime, 3-0 Pittsburgh. Shotgun set, and they decide to go to Nick Chubb. And a pretty impressive run there by Nick Chubb. Nice 9-yard gain, bouncing off that right tackle. Duggar and company there with the coverage. 2nd down and 1 at the Pittsburgh 45. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Hand off to Chubb again. Running with a little bit of passion and energy like he used to for the Cleveland Browns. Herbig there with the tackle again, linebacker for the Steelers. And that's going to be 1st down, Texans, move the chains. And that's one thing that you'll see some similarities in these two teams. They love to run the ball and then eventually wait for the defenses to kind of come up a little bit. And then eventually that big play action or throw deep will happen for Rodgers and CJ Stroud. So again, the players and the skill set is a little different, but based off the schemes, they do play similar in that respect. And they both love to run the ball when they have the lead in the second half, just like when good teams, typically do. Handoff up the middle. And Nick Chubb again, 6-yard gain, just chipping away. Second down and 4 at the Pittsburgh 33. I mean, going into the season, I know a lot of the Saints fans were like, oh, brother, this, but again, he did play well, in the middle towards the late of the season. Not sure if that's going to be the long-term future. Short-term future, it looks like it's going to be, but, at some point you may need to get someone better than him if you want to be able to get back to the glory days with Drew Brees. Woody Marks, bouncing it to the outside. Great block. Wow. Good cutback. First down, Texans, and now Houston sniffing the end zone for the very first time. 20-yard run there by Woody Marks. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 13. Nice job there by Woody Marks, bringing that electricity for the Houston Texan offense. In field goal range for Ka'imi Fairbairn, but they're thinking 6. Less than 9 minutes to go here, 3-0 Pittsburgh. Yeah, just kind of sad that a lot of the other studs are getting older. Alvin Kamara, AK-41, getting a little bit older, right? Demario Davis, a.k.a. the Glue, getting a little bit older, right? Cameron Jordan getting a little bit older, so. And then obviously they traded Lattimore away, to the Commanders, so you don't have to really worry about him anymore. But again, there's still some nice pieces, Olave and a few others, but trading away Rashid Shaheed to the Seahawks, obviously it shows you how good that he's been. He's been the X factor for Seattle and might be the reason why they end up making the Super Bowl or NFC Championship game. 8-yard run there by Woody Marks up the middle. And that's going to be second down and 2 at the Pittsburgh 5. $8:43 left in the second quarter. 3-0 Pittsburgh. That's CJ Stroud, Woody Marks, and this Pittsburgh offense, Houston offense is closing in. Second down and 3 at the 6 as we come back from commercial break. Got about half the people in the room that have hit the like button so far. Do your boy a solid. We're almost at halftime. And the better, results that we can get with the likes, we'll get more shares throughout the YouTube algorithm to help us get some more people to like, sub, donate, comment, and share as well. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Woody Marks in the medical tent. That's not good. Hopefully he's okay. Very key piece, key cog in the wheel as far as this offense is concerned. CJ Stroud, shotgun set, short right. Christian Kirk, he's there. Touchdown, Texans. There we go. And that's exactly what we thought would happen at some point in this game. Way to bring that electricity. Nice job by CJ Stroud, Christian Kirk. Touchdown, Texans. Extra point by Ka'imi Fairbairn is good. 7-3 Houston. Nice job. See if I can find a good Texan photo of Christian Kirk. There's not too many that are available, though. Looks like we'll have to go with his player photo. Can't really find anything that's good HD or 4K. So sometimes you just got to go with the player photo throughout the training camp and whatnot. But great job by Christian Kirk with that 6-yard touchdown pass from C.J. Stroud. Way to come up big. 7-3 Houston. And we'll see what Aaron Rodgers can do here. And 8:28 left in the second quarter. See if they can get a touchdown themselves to take the lead. And if you're just tuning in to the matchup, Chris Boswell with a 32-yard field goal in the first quarter, 3-0 Pittsburgh. And we just saw C.J. Stroud with a beautiful throw, play-action bootleg to Christian Kirk. 14 plays, 92 yards, one of the longest drives they've had all season, turning into 6. And Kaimi Fairbairn with the extra point and good. 7-3, Texans lead. That was a fantastic drive. That's actually one of the better, drives that I've seen that have been 90-plus yards, this season. And obviously in the playoffs, it's pretty rare to have a 90-plus yard drive for a score. Most of the time, if you end up having something that's 70 to 85 yards, it usually turns into a field goal and stalls late. But great job there. 14 plays, 92 yards, eating 7 minutes off the clock. Let's see if Pittsburgh can respond. And Kenneth Gainwell with the return. And looks like he got a nice 24-yard return. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 38 for Aaron Rodgers. They can't fade the run. They still got to give the ball to Jalen Warren. We'll see if they get DK Metcalf a few more opportunities here. Rodgers, short left to Jonnu Smith. No gain. Jones there with the coverage. Second down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 38. No gain there. Naquan Jones with the coverage and tackle. Feisty defender there for the Texans. Rodgers trying to get them to bite on that hard count under center. Rodgers, play action, getting pressured and just throws it away. Danielle Hunter was there, and that should be grounding. No question about it. There it is, intentional grounding. Great defense there. And that goes from second down and 21 to loss of down to third down and 21. So, the Texans are good enough to blitz on every down, and there's no doubt about that. But again, if you're going to run play action, you got to get a hat and a hat on Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. There's no doubt about that. You can't let those guys, get loose, and Jalen Warren missed the assignment there to pick up that blitz for Aaron Rodgers. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube after the intentional grounding there by Aaron Rodgers. 0 for 3 on third down. Average yards to go is 9, and that's not going to win the game if you're Pittsburgh. Rodgers in the shotgun set, short middle to Kenneth Gainwell, and a nice 11-yard pass, but short of the marker. Great hit there. To'o with the tackle, and that's going to be 4th down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 38. Forcing Pittsburgh to punt. We'll see if C.J. Stroud can get in the end zone or get a field goal by Kaimi Fairbairn here before half. Pittsburgh with the punt. And punt down by Holcomb after that Corliss Waltman punt. Looks like it's going to be 1st down and 10 at the Houston 19 for C.J. Stroud when we get back from the commercial break. .6:57 left in the second quarter, 7-3 Houston. .97 yards passing for C.J. Stroud, 9 for 13 with 1 TD. Rodgers started kind of hot with DK Metcalf, but has kind of, tailed off just a little bit. 6 for 11 for 65 yards, and has to be able to find another target besides DK Metcalf, and maybe that'll be the tight ends in the second half. Handoff to Woody Marks off that right guard for about 4 yards. Derek Harmon from the Ducks with the tackle. Steelers D tackle with the stop. 2nd down and 6 at the Houston 23. Rushes for 55 yards, pacing for 100 for Woody Marks. Would not be shocked if he gets in the end zone at some point in this game as well. 6 minutes to go here in the second quarter. 7-3 Houston. Shotgun set, snap is low, fumbled. CJ picks it up again, and ball comes out again. Did they lose the football again? Or did they get their own fumble recovery? Oh, wow. Looks like they barely get the ball back. What is CJ doing? I mean, if you keep doing that, that's going to end up turning into, big turnovers and whatnot. Very sloppy by the Texans and CJ Stroud. Like, what is he doing? And did TJ Watt actually get that? Looks like he did. TJ Watt's always near the football. Big turnover there. I thought for a moment maybe one of the Texan players was going to get on it, but not so fast. TJ Watt doing TJ Watt things. Hand off to Kenneth Gainwell, loss of 2. Second down and 12 at the Houston 23. Nice job there by TJ Watt. Right place and right time doing TJ Watt things. And again, kind of shocked on how sloppy the connection has been between the center and CJ Stroud. Not really, what you would expect from them. But again, they do still have the 7-3 lead, but at some point it's going to come back and bite them, possibly here. Second down and 12 at the Houston 23. Shotgun set. Rodgers short left to Kenneth Gainwell. Got to go to someone other than Gainwell. Loss of 2. Going in the wrong direction here. Loss of 2 and another loss of 2. Now it's third down and 14. And, you're not going to be able to, get third down conversions if every conversion is going to be third down and 9 or longer for Rodgers, He has limits. Nice tackle there by Lassiter. And again, what is going on with the play calling here? You got to be able to let it loose and go down the field. Where's Freiermuth? Where's Jonnu Smith? Where's DK Metcalf? Throw it down the field. Obviously, the offensive line is starting to get pushed around a little bit, but not a very creative scheme as far as play calling here in the second quarter for Pittsburgh. 0 for 4 on third down. Average yards to go is 12. That's not going to get them a victory in the second half if they have to do that the whole game. Shotgun set. Rodgers short left to Gainwell again. What the hell is going on here? Has to go to a check down. Nothing else available. And gains about 12, but short of the first down marker. 4th down and 2 at the Houston 13. Send out your field goal unit. To'o with the tackle, so it looks like they're going to go for it. I don't know. I don't think I agree with this, but we'll see. Sometimes it will work out. Shotgun set. Rodgers short left to Adam Thielen, the former Panther and former Viking. First down, Steelers. So in the first opportunity for them to go on 4th down, they cash in, and now they're looking at a touchdown momentarily here for the Steelers. I think it would have been, smart just to take the 3, but they did get a good play call with enough, and they finally go to someone other than Kenneth Gainwell. First down, Steelers. Move the chains. Sometimes you got to be a little gutsy, and that time it worked out for Pittsburgh, but again, it's not going to work out on every 4th down attempt. Jalen Warren off that left tackle for a gain of a yard. Kamari Lassiter with another tackle there for the Texans. Second and goal at the Houston 8. Definitely a defensive war and a defensive battle, but you are starting to see the offenses, do a little here and there in the first and second quarter. Should open up a little bit more in the third and the fourth, you would assume. Defenses will get a little fatigued, and that should open the game up slightly. Rodgers, pass incomplete. Third and goal at the Houston 8. And this would be a great stop for Houston if they can still hold Pittsburgh to 3 after their, them going for it on 4th down and 2. Yeah, Lassiter is a tackling machine. There's no doubt about that. There's nobody open for Aaron Rodgers. Ineligible downfield pass. Declined. Flag comes out. 2:36 left here before halftime. 7-3 Texans. And even though Houston has looked sloppy, it hasn't really come back to bite them just yet. All right, center Zach Frazier, you got to be better. Big third down here for Pittsburgh. Again, they need touchdowns, especially when they get this close to the red zone, because if you get field goals, that won't be enough to beat Houston. you would assume. And the biggest third down here for Pittsburgh. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a Texan sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Will Anderson Jr., and no one can stop him one-on-one. Rodgers hanging onto the ball too long, and a big sack by Will Anderson Jr. Roll Tide, and that will bring out the field goal unit. Great job by the defense after the turnover. And again, it should be 7-6 here momentarily. Great job there by Will Anderson Jr. Roll Tide. Yeah, you'll take a sack if the quarterback falls down and you're the first guy that touches him. You'll take it. Cheap sacks sometimes happen. And that's going to be the 2-minute warning. 4th and goal at the Houston 17. They won't be going for it, obviously. And, we'll assume that Chris Boswell will make this chip shot when we come back from the commercial break. Kick is up by Boswell, and it is good. Nice 35-yard kick. And again, a little sloppy play by the Texan offense. And again, holding the Steelers to 2 field goals is a win, especially after the turnover. 7-6 with 1:57 left in the second quarter. We'll see if Houston can get another field goal or touchdown before half. Nice chip shot there by Chris Boswell. 7-6, Houston lead. I mean, the snaps haven't been good. CJ himself, once he has his, hands on the football, it's been very slippery out there, as if it was raining or bad weather, but not the case unless it just has some sweat on it. But, it definitely is a little alarming, to see, the center quarterback connection being so sloppy. But again, it hasn't come back to bite them really yet. They still have a 1-point lead and a chance to extend the lead here before half. 4 fumbles, 2 lost. And again, I don't think I've seen a game where CJ has looked this sloppy ever. But again, to have that many fumbles and not to be down by 10 points or more, you have to be blessed. And just like the game yesterday between the Chargers and the Patriots, slow first half, defense, but eventually the defenses will get a little fatigued and we should see the offenses pick up the pace in the second half. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll even get a defensive touchdown by one of these teams. Chris Boswell kick, 63 yards, and a nice 18-yard return from Jalen Noel. First down and 10 for CJ Stroud here on the Houston 20. Hopefully Miami will play better than Oregon did, but I assume Indiana will win this pretty easily. Woody Marks off that right guard for a 4-yard gain. Second down and 6 at the Houston 24. Minute 40 and counting here in the second quarter. Houston up 7-6, and we'll see how aggressive they are. If they actually try to, get points, or if they're just going to be very conservative and run the football and kind of, bleed the clock out and get into halftime. Shotgun set, CJ Stroud, short right to Christian Kirk. 5-yard pass from Stroud to Kirk. Third down and 1 at the Houston 29. Timeout, Texans. And you're definitely seeing a lot of Christian Kirk here early with CJ Stroud. .107 left in the second quarter. 7-6 Houston. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Direct snap to Cade Stover, the tight end. Up the middle, 4-yard gain. First down, Texans. Interesting play call there. First down and 10 at the Houston 33. With about 45 seconds to go here before half. I would like to see the Texans, have at least one deep shot, to Christian Kirk, Nico Collins, or Dalton Schultz to see if they can get a long field goal by Kaimi Fairbairn, but just over there with the catch. And it's second down and 5 after that catch at the 38 of Houston with 41 seconds left here before halftime. Too many commercials here in the second quarter. Let's get the game going. Seven, 6 Texans lead with 41 seconds left here before half. Second down and 5 at the Houston 38 for the offense, and we'll see if Houston will be able to add on any more points with Kaimi Fairbairn or CJ Stroud here before half. would like to see the Steelers go do a little bit more with Jaylen Warren, but we'll find out if that will be the case in the second half. Defenses have played well. Definitely, it's a grind. The game should open up quite a bit in the second half. All right, let's see if Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Woody Marks, and CJ Stroud got anything left here in the tank. 4 fumbles, 2 lost in the first half. And, normally with stats like that, you're down by 10 or more, but offenses have been a little sluggish and sloppy. Shotgun set. CJ Stroud going deep to Jalen Knoll and complete. 3rd down and 5 at the Houston 38. Knoll's got to come up with that football. Timeout, Pittsburgh. I mean, especially when you got your hands on it. But Clark with a big pop late to free that football. And again, Knoll, if you get your hands on it, knowing that you're going to take the pop, you got to find a way to come up with that catch. Showtime in the building. What's good? No, I think it's going to be Raiola will be the backup. Dante Moore will come back. And then if he gets hurt, then obviously Raiola can step up and come in, and he'll just sit behind Dante for a year, and then maybe the following year he'll be the starter. So I don't think that Dante Moore will be going to the NFL. So we have a lot of our other starters on defense that are coming back. So, usually starters that have less than 20 starts in their career don't fare very well in the NFL. I mean, unless you're like Cam Newton or Ryan Tannehill, but for a lot of the others, they've been failures. So, look at Anthony Richardson, so again, I don't want Dante Moore, to go to a bad team with a bad owner, with a bad coach and bad coordinators and not enough supporting cast and then fail. So, if Dante was smart, he'll have enough NIL money to stick around, and it would be in his best interest to, not end his career like the way that it happened against Indiana. I'm pretty sure Dante Moore will be back, and we'll just have Raiola as the backup. And I'll take that. Raiola hangs on to the football a little bit too long, takes a lot of sacks. At least he did in Nebraska. But if anyone can develop a quarterback, it definitely is Oregon. Timeout, Texans. First down and 10 at the Houston 45, and they're just trying to get a little bit further for a long Kaimi Fairbairn field goal to go up 10-6 at half. I mean, unless CJ can go deep, I mean, it is possible. Christian Kirk or Nico Collins or Dalton Schultz could come up with a touchdown here late. 28 seconds left. They have time. Oh, he's committed to quite a few teams and then decommitted. Ohio State was the first big school that he committed and then, decommitted. So, I mean, he's been kind of bouncing around there, Georgia and then Nebraska. So I'm not too sure how many years he has left, but I assume he's got at least 2. First down and 10. CJ Stroud steps up in the pocket, going deep to Nico Collins and just out of reach. That would have been a big play. And that's going to be second down and 10 at the Houston 45. Yeah, but again, if Raiola ended up going to just some garbage, team, it's just going to be the same thing like Nebraska. Well, you might be the starter, but, no one really cares, So, again, if you end up going to a program like Oregon, at some point, if there's an injury, you can get, put into the fold. And then obviously sitting and learning, from the coaches, here in the Pacific Northwest, could be good for him as well. Shotgun set. Stroud going to Woody Marks there in the flat. Gets popped. Wow. Holy cow. What a fucking hit by Pittsburgh. Wilson with the big hit. One of the best hits. That reminded me of the 80s. Holy moly. 3rd down and 10 at the Houston 45. But I am happy, even though a lot of people like to talk shit about Raiola, Patrick Mahomes clone and whatnot. And when Mahomes lost the bet with the Texas Tech Oregon, he had the Oregon jersey on. And then obviously people have been putting that photo up as he lost the bet, and then Raiola signing or committing to Oregon. So we'll see where it goes, but I'm happy to have him. Anyone that we can get to make our team better, to go a little bit further in college football, that's what it's about. Shotgun set, CJ Stroud, short left to Dalton Schultz, and gains about 4 here in the check down, and that's going to be 4th down and 6 at the Houston 49. Kyle Duggar there with the pressure on CJ Stroud. Got a punt. There's no reason to go for it here. It would be a big mistake to go for it, especially if you don't get it, and then all of a sudden you give 3 points to Pittsburgh and they go up 9-7 at half. So. Tommy Townsend, the former Chief, with the punt, 43 yards, and down by Ingram. And it looks like it's going to be 1st down and 10 at the 8. They're just going to kneel it down, and that is halftime. Low-scoring affair like we saw with the Chargers and the Patriots, but again, I do feel like second half will ramp up, and there will be a chance for, a fumble for a touchdown, a pick six, but again, I assume the offenses will be a little bit better as some of the defensive players start to fatigue and tire out. But there is a chance that neither team gets to 20, unless, you end up getting some big plays. Reflect in the building, and TJ in the building. What's good? Four fumbles, 2 lost, and you're still up by 1. I mean, there's not very many games where you could be fumbling that often with the center quarterback exchange or CJ Stroud. Very sloppy game. We know Woody Marks is an underrated running back. Nico Collins can do Nico Collins things, as well as Christian Kirk, and they made a few big catches. But again, it's really been the defense up front with Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. And then Aaron Rodgers looked pretty good early. First play of the game was a 10-yard run by Jaylen Warren, and they faded him after that. DK Metcalf had a couple big catches. Over 40 yards total and 2 catches early. Then he had a drop, and then we haven't really seen him get the opportunities after that. And then TJ Watt coming up big with the fumble recovery, and he's all over the place. But again, defensive war, defensive battle. But again, we should be able to get a little bit more offense in the second half. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. And even though I did have that issue with the World Baseball Classic a couple years ago, I want to do it, especially since Cal is on the team. And, I think the only issue that I had is when we had the championship, a stream where, for whatever reason, they thought that I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to do. I wasn't actually showing the game. I don't know if someone thought I was or something of that nature. They heard me talking and saw, a photo up and thought it was actually the broadcast. But, to ban me for a week for something that I didn't even do wrong was crazy. And, I've never had that happen to me ever. And, I would like to do the World Baseball Classic, and, that'll help us get the baseball season hyped up. But I guess I'll have to tread lightly because I don't want to, have a ban on something, like that for a whole week for something that I didn't even do wrong. But the team ended up having a post on MLB today. And the roster looks pretty good, where it looks like the USA could win. Obviously, we know a lot of the other, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, and, we have a lot of superstars that are, from a lot of the, South American countries and whatnot, and it's going to be competitive. But if you look at, Cal Raleigh and Aaron Judge and some of the others that are on the roster, the pitching staff could be a little bit better. Towards the bottom of the list, you got some of the big, stars in the league, and, they have some pitchers that are, kind of so-so, that are, on the squad. But, I'm definitely excited to be able to watch. And I guess as we get closer, to that WBC, I may end up doing some of the games and just hope that they don't do me dirty like they did last time. So. You lost Muhammad to Cal. That's interesting. And obviously we know Oregon's OC and DC ended up, leaving one to Cal and then one to Kentucky and whatnot. And that's a shame that Muhammad left. I loved him. But, you got Jaden Lamar. We got Raiola. So we got the, Patrick Mahomes clone. And I assume he'll just be the backup for Dante Moore for a year and then potentially the starter. But, Raiola has kind of a tendency of transferring a lot. So, depending on, Dante Moore's decision on either going to the draft or coming back, I feel he will be coming back. And, just to have a good starting quarterback as a backup would be great, even though Raiola could start on a good chunk of, Division I teams. But, both quarterbacks still need quite a bit of growth, before they take the next step to the NFL. Both are not ready by any means, but we are returning quite a few starters, from this Oregon team. And again, we just kind of have bad luck, against the, top teams in the Big Ten, with Michigan and Ohio State and now Indiana. I still feel that, Dan Lanning is the right guy to be able to right the ship and, get us to where we want to go. And, disappointing end of the season, but I still love Dan Lanning, still love the Ducks. And I'm hopeful that, good things will happen for not only Oregon, but also for UW and for the Huskies, for you Reflect and everyone else that roots for them. We got about 6 minutes left here before halftime. 7-6 Houston. Let's look at some of the stats here for each team. All right, so we got C.J. Stroud, 13 for 20, 1 TD, 4 fumbles, 2 lost, and you're up by 1 at half, 7-6. And I mean, that's crazy. And then you got Woody Marks with 11 carries, 59 yards, pacing for 120. And Christian Kirk leading the team with 5 receptions and a touchdown and 58 yards, so he's doing his thing. And then on the flip side, Aaron Rodgers was good early with a couple receptions to DK Metcalf, but not a lot since. 9 for 15 and only 79 yards. That's not going to get it done. Jaylen Warren's got 5 carries for 14 yards. He's an RB2, not an RB1, and they haven't really been the same at running back without Najee Harris and him together. That's facts. DK Metcalf has 2 receptions for 42 yards, and then he had a drop on his 3rd attempt, and he hasn't really got targeted since then. And that's kind of been the story. At this point, it's really been, a lot of defense from TJ Watt, Will Anderson Jr. doing his thing on the opposite side. Same thing with Danielle Hunter. And again, you would assume the Texans are going to have a better shot in beating the Patriots, but, New England at home, very well-rounded team. It kind of feels to me it's going to be Seahawks, Rams, and potentially Patriots, Bills. But again, the Broncos could beat the Bills at home. It's very possible, but that's kind of what it feels like to me at the moment. It feels like it could be the Patriots and the Buffalo Bills, Drake May and Josh Allen, which would be fantastic. Even though I like the Broncos defense and, Bo doesn't have a whole lot to work with, but he's trying his best. And, the Rams and Seahawks based on, who they're playing against, a Bears and 49er team. Not to say that those teams can't overachieve and get it done, but that's kind of, to me, where we're trending. Buffalo, Denver could go either way. But again, as great as Texans defense is, if they play like this, in the following game against New England, this is not going to get you a victory. New England will be able to get enough to get the job done. And again, I do like Houston's team, but again, a little unpredictable, on what you're going to get, game in and game out offensively with that. So. Yeah, Jay Harris ended up leaving as well. So, I mean, and we were thankful when he was, decommit that we actually had him. And I don't think a lot of people realize when we played Indiana, we were on RB3, RB4, RB5. We didn't even have our, starting 2 running backs. So, when you don't have, those guys available, I already knew that it was going to be not very good, as far as the offense. And, DeCorian Moore has been hurt. We didn't get a chance to see Evan Stewart. So it's like, even though we had the best tight end in the country, we didn't get him the ball, and then you threw a pick six to start the game. So, even if Dante Moore would have played well, we weren't winning that game. There were just too many injuries, too many guys opting out. And again, you need to have everyone available to be able to go against a powerhouse like that. And, when you have to go with your third running back, and again, Jay Harris did the best that he could. They didn't really give, a few of the other guys like De'Aaron Hill, more opportunities. And then once they give De'Aaron Hill an opportunity, what did he do? Have that football hit his shoulder. They fumbled, within the 5, and then it ended up being 21-7. And then you knew the game was over. And it's just kind of heartbreaking, when the game is already over, in the first half. But I guess better than being down 28-7 in the first quarter, like in the previous year against the Buckeyes. At least we were able to beat JMU and Texas Tech. So we're going further, but still, to be able to get beat down, by Indiana like that, wasn't really the representation of what Oregon football is about. But you got to give credit where credit is due. Those guys are amazing. They're well coached. And one big stat that I did notice, they had 40, they didn't have any 5-star, players, but they had like 40 to 45, guys that had 3 to 5 years of experience on the team. So if you got 40 guys on the team, that have 3 to 5 years of experience, that definitely shows. And you got the Heisman winner in Fernando Mendoza, offensive line off the chain. And obviously, even though they didn't have any 5-star guys, golly, those running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends are super athletic. And the defense is good as well. So there's no scenario in my mind, even though Carson Beck and, Malachi Tony and some of the others, and Bain on the defense, those guys are pretty good, as far as, getting hot at the right time. But I just don't see any scenario that the Hurricanes beat Indiana unless, the only way to me is if Fernando Mendoza ended up leaving the game. And if he ended up getting hurt, then that would be, to me, the only way that Miami wins. Miami will probably play better than Oregon, but I don't think it'll be enough. All right, we got about 1 minute left before we get into the third quarter here. Yeah, I do like Drake May a lot. You can tell Josh McDaniels has mentored him really well. Offensive line has been great. And again, they get the most out of their players. It feels like a team, like a full team. Buffalo, they can't stop the run. The Broncos, offense is not very good until the fourth quarter, right? And then obviously with these two teams, they have defense, but offenses are very hit or miss. So again, it's like there's not too many like complete teams to me that I'm looking at in the playoffs. I think New England is a complete team, Seattle is a complete team, and the Rams are a complete team. And that's probably why those teams are going to have the best shot, besides Buffalo, if they can beat Denver to be able to make the Super Bowl. And overall, even though they can't stop the run, they have one of the best secondaries, Buffalo. So yeah, the defense could be a little bit better for the run defense, but overall, that's a pretty complete team as well. So, and again, Josh Allen, kept running into the Chiefs, and finally the Chiefs are, not in the playoff picture. So, Buffalo is kind of the kryptonite, I feel, for Denver and New England and Houston and Pittsburgh. As long as Josh Allen and Cook are available and they're out there, you have to assume that they have as good of a chance as anybody to represent the AFC. So we'll see where it goes. Chief in the building. What's good? Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Hope everyone is doing well. Tomorrow we'll be doing our first NBA stream of the 2026 season. We'll do the Spurs and the Thunder. I like watching Wemby and I like SGA. Obviously, the NBA and the NHL and NASCAR and WWE will be filler streams until we get to the World Baseball Classic, as well as the MLB regular season. But again, we're going to tap in. So tomorrow will be NBA, and that game will be on I think KGW. I think it'll be live across the country for everyone to watch along. And then I'll be doing the Kraken on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll probably take Friday off. And then Saturday, Sunday will be NFL. And then Monday will be the Natty. So we'll be sprinkling in, in 1 or 2 NBA streams a week. and NHL with the Seattle Kraken on Prime. One or two, Kraken matchups just to have something to do instead of just doing nothing. And then again, as we do that, we'll get into February. And then once football wraps up, we'll do a little bit of the World Baseball Classic in the early part of March, possibly. NASCAR will be back at the beginning of February. So we'll do a little bit of NASCAR, trucks, Xfinity, as well as the NASCAR Cup Series. And again, just waiting until we get into baseball season. And then once we get into baseball season, we'll be doing potentially every Mariner game except for probably one. And the only reason that we'll miss one game is because I'll be going to the game. But we haven't really decided which one. I do want to go to get a bobblehead if we're not going to be able to go on the 4th of July against the Blue Jays. And they got a couple, that I could possibly, go and get. Like there's a Cal Raleigh bobblehead. And again, if that one is a day where I can't go, I might have to go on eBay and buy it and stuff, because I know there will be a few people that will give it up, but I'll probably have to pay 50 to 100 for it, but it'll be worth it. All right, Chris Boswell here with the kick, 58 yards, and Jalen Knoll with an 18-yard return, first down and 10 at the Houston 25. Kind of let Paisley into the room. CJ Stroud, short left to Jaden Higgins. Great catch there. 16-yard pass, bringing the electricity right out of the gates. First down, Texans. And I think the scoring will be much higher here in the second half, just like we had with the Chargers and the Patriots last night. Obviously, we know the Chargers couldn't do anything. Patriots were eventually able to get going, and I have to assume we're going to get at least one team to hit 20. Maybe not both, but we should hopefully get at least one. And I don't know if it'll, end up being a 21-20 final. That might be the best case scenario if we can get 2 touchdowns from the Houston Texans and 2 from the Steelers. But, you have to assume that there's going to be a field goal mixed in at some point. Woody Marks off that left guard and a nice 14-yard run. First down, Texans. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 45. And Woody Marks is a very underrated running back. Asante Samuel Jr., the former Charger, and Florida State Seminole with the tackle. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 45. Now JT in the building. What's good? Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Less than 13:50 to go here in the third quarter, 7-6. Houston hanging on with a 1-point lead, but a very sloppy first half. 4 fumbles for CJ Stroud and the Texans. They lost 2, and normally when you have that many fumbles, you're down by 10 or more. So for them to still be up by 1 is a miracle. And a great catch there by Jaden Higgins, 14-yard pass. First down, Texans. And again, both teams need to be able to air it out. They were both conservative, ran the football, pretty frequently. But again, if either team wants to win, you're going to have to air the football out. Try to get some PIs and try to open up the defense a little bit. And again, we're seeing CJ Stroud do that here in the third quarter. And I assume Aaron Rodgers will be going deep as well, at least a few times. Defenses are very quick with Cameron Hayward and TJ Watt for the Steelers on CJ Stroud. And then on the flip side, Aaron Rodgers has to worry about Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. So you can't sit in the pocket too long, because if you hang on to the football, you're going to get cracked and you might end up, going out and missing some time. So, you only have a second and a half to kind of go through your reads. And a lot of these, snaps that you saw in the first half, they're not able to go to their second or third progression. It's like first progression, take a quick look at the second, get rid of it. Because again, if you hang on to it too much, you're going to get hurt, or you're going to fumble or have a turnover. 13:24 left in the third quarter, 7-6 Houston. Yeah, I mean, Texans have a better chance of beating New England than Pittsburgh does. To me, Pittsburgh has zero chance of beating. They would be playing like the Chargers, where they play good defense, but you're just not going to get enough. Now, Rodgers might be able to get more than Justin Herbert did, which is nothing, really on the board, but they will not be able to beat New England. Even if they were at home, they wouldn't be able to beat New England. But New England at home, the way that they're coached up, offense, defense, special teams, really the Texans would be the team that would have a shot. But honestly, I don't think that they're going to be able to do enough for 4 quarters, maybe 3.5. But, New England, it feels like is destined for the AFC Championship game. And then, you can take your pick between Denver and Buffalo, but again, I have to kind of side with Buffalo because of Josh Allen, even though I do love Denver's defense and they're at home. But it kind of feels like, to me, it's going to be the Patriots and the Bills, battling it out to the Super Bowl, and then the Seahawks and the Rams. No disrespect to the Niners against Seattle, no disrespect against the Bears against the Rams. Those teams have earned their spots, and no disrespect to the Texans, Steelers, or the Buffalo Bills, obviously as the underdog, I guess, even though you're on the road, but that's kind of how it feels like it might end up, but again, we'll have to wait to see if the Texans can first win this game against Pittsburgh, and they do have a better chance to compete with New England than the Steelers, in my opinion. First down and 10, hand off up the middle to Woody Marks, nice 9-yard run. Jalen Ramsey, the former Jag, there with the tackle and Ram. Second down and 1 at the Pittsburgh 22. Storm in the building, what's good? But if you're looking for well-rounded teams, New England, Seattle, and then the Rams feel like they're the most well-rounded. And then after that, probably Buffalo. And then after Buffalo, maybe Houston, and then after that, then maybe, the Niners and the Bears. But again, no one really trusts Caleb Williams. They got to run the football and play defense. And again, they were lucky to score 25 in the fourth quarter to beat the Packers. And obviously with no George Kittle, I love Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh, but you have to assume at some point that run will end. 2-yard run there by Woody Marks. TJ Watt there with the tackle. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 20. But give me Buffalo and Seattle on Saturday, and give me the Rams and the Patriots on Sunday. And depending on, the time and what we got going on, I'll probably try to do both games on both days if I can. Hand off to Woody Marks, bouncing it to the outside, 4-yard run. Second down and 6 at the Pittsburgh 16. 11 minutes to go here in the third quarter, 7-6 Houston. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train, and 5 to 15 subs. Little check down to Dalton Schultz. Good defense there by Duggar and Herbig. Third down and 4 at the Pittsburgh 14. Man in motion, Stroud, third down and 4. Pump fake, get rid of it. And intercepted by Pittsburgh. Wow. And again, CJ Stroud not looking like the quarterback when he was a rookie, looking more like the quarterback in his sophomore year. And again, it's kind of a shame because, we think that when he's healthy, for the most part, he's a top 10 quarterback. But again, today, not looking very good on the road. Pittsburgh Steelers are undefeated on Monday for Monday Night Football, and the Texans have not won a road playoff game in their existence. So again, definitely favoring Pittsburgh, even though Aaron Rodgers is old and whatnot, and he's not very reliable. But right now, CJ Stroud not really putting his team in a position to pull away and win. Great defense there by Eccles and the Steelers. And honestly, if we're being real, based on how the Texans have played up to this point, they don't deserve to win this game. But again, they do have the better chance of beating New England, but I don't think either one of these teams are on the Patriots level, in my opinion. Had to go get Paisley some food there, so had to step away for a second. Jaylen Warren off that right guard for a 7-yard gain. 2nd down and 3 at the Pittsburgh 11. Less than 10 minutes left here in the third quarter. 7-6 Texans. Yeah, but New England is so deep. CJ would have to have a spectacular game, and, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter would have to wreak havoc, and I just don't know if you're going to be able to do that on the road in New England. Now, if Houston were to be at home against New England, then I would be a little bit more confident, but, at this point in the season, you might be able to beat Pittsburgh on the road, but I don't think you're beating New England. You have to give them credit with what they have at Vrabel on one side of the ball, McDaniels on the other, and, the way that they've been playing. They're one of the most complete teams in the entire NFL. But, again, if CJ plays great, and the defense plays great, it feels like they could, match up with Buffalo or Denver or New England. But, again, I just don't know if they were going to be able to do it on the road. False start there on Jonnu Smith. Self-inflicted wound for Pittsburgh. You can't have that. 1st down and 15 at the Pittsburgh 9. Jolly in the building. What's good? Rodgers, short right to Calvin Austin III. No gain. Petrie there with the coverage. 2nd down and 15 at the Pittsburgh 9. And again, it's been 9 to 12 yards on 3rd down. And, Rodgers is old. You can't you can't really be relying on him to have to go deep, all the time. And again, obviously, when you get to this position, they're a team that typically fades the run. And if the Steelers are going to win the game, you have to continue to go to Jaylen Warren and the running backs. And again, really, they haven't been the same team since they let Najee Harris go to the Chargers, even though he got hurt at the very beginning of the year and they weren't really able to use him. But he's an RB2, not an RB1, and it shows. Shotgun set, Rodgers short left to Calvin Austin III, 6-yard pass, 3rd down and 9, and again another 3rd and long at the Pittsburgh 15. Less than 8 minutes left here in the third quarter. Texans hanging on by a 1-point lead with 4 fumbles, 2 lost. And shocking that they're still up by 1. But again, you do have Aaron Rodgers on the other side. It would be a little bit different if you had someone a little bit more capable. But, Rodgers has been playing better than, let's say, Kenny Pickett. But he ain't no Ben Roethlisberger. Shotgun set, Rodgers short middle to MVS, the former Chief, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. First down, Steelers. And they desperately needed that conversion on 3rd down. 0 third down conversions in the first half in a playoff game's first time since 1989. And they finally get a nice 3rd down conversion there as you see the Texans play zone and get burnt on it. Handoff to Kenneth Gainwell, loss of 2. Jalen Petrie, the safety, coming up and making the tackle for the Texans. 2nd down and 12 at the Pittsburgh 27. Shotgun set, Rodgers, short right to MVS, incomplete. 3rd down and 12 at the Pittsburgh 27. Texans are getting very close and picking Rodgers off, like inches away from a few of these footballs in this game. Less than 6 minutes to go here in the third quarter. Texans hanging on to a 1-point lead, 7-6, with 5:52 left. Shotgun set, Rodgers going deep to Calvin Austin III, and complete. 4th down and 12 at the Pittsburgh 27, and this will be a punt. They don't really have a whole lot to work with, as far as wide receivers are concerned. I mean, you got DK Metcalf, you got Jonnu Smith, and I don't even know if Pat Freiermuth is even available because we haven't even seen him all day. Pittsburgh fans starting to boo. Oh, yeah, that should have been PI. I don't know about that. Referee says not a foul, but, when you got your hands on the guy's shoulder and whatnot, I mean, what do you got to do? Grab his arm and then you can actually call the penalty? It's like tit for tat with these referees and these people that are on TV, because they can say the same thing that's a penalty in one game and have the same exact play and say it's not a penalty in another. There's not really a whole lot of consistency, because I've definitely seen penalties called on a play like that. And we've also seen plays let it go like that as well. Also, it depends on if it's underthrown or overthrown. Corliss Waitman there with the punt. And a 12-yard return from Jalen Knoll. 1st down and 10 at the Houston 30. .5:33 left in the third quarter, 7-6, Houston. still looking for our first dono on the dono train, and any help that we can get with the likes would be greatly appreciated. And if you're just tuning into the matchup, Chris Boswell with a 32-yard field goal in the first quarter, 3-0 Pittsburgh. Then C.J. Stroud with a 6-yard touchdown pass to Christian Kirk in the second quarter on a 14-play, 92-yard drive, eating up 7+ minutes, 7-3 Houston. And then a Boswell field goal with 1:57 left before half, 35-yarder, made it 7-6, and that's where we still sit here tonight. C.J. Stroud, short right to Xavier Hutchinson. Nice 5-yard pass. 2nd down and 5 at the Houston 35. Terrible towels in full effect. Both defenses very stingy here tonight. You know, a little surprising on how good Pittsburgh's D has been playing since Aaron Rodgers really hasn't done a whole lot, and they've been on the field for a good majority of this game, and they're still only down by 1. Woody Marks up the middle there for 2 yards, but that's going to be a penalty. Flag comes out. I believe illegal motion there by the Texans, by Dalton Schultz. And that's going to turn into 2nd down and 10 as they blow that play dead. Yeah, Woody Marks is underrated, but definitely not as good as Joe Mixon when he's helping. But that would be a good 1-2 punch rather than going from Woody Marks to Nick Chubb. That's a little bit of a downgrade. Now, if it was Nick Chubb on the Browns, prior to the last ACL tear, which he's had a billion of them, then it would maybe be a different story. Uh-oh, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is. Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Derek Harmon, the Oregon Duck D-tackle with the big sack lunch on C.J. Stroud. 3rd down and 10 at the Houston 30. Normally, when you think of Pittsburgh getting sacks, you think Cameron Hayward on one side or TJ Watt on the other, but Harmon has been good for Pittsburgh since they drafted him. Shotgun set, CJ Stroud, short right to Nico Collins, and complete. And that's going to be 4th down and 10 at the Houston 30. Nico slipping on that play, not ideal. Got popped early in the game, got sandwiched by 2 Steelers, and really hasn't been the same since then. And that was on the 2nd play of the game, And again, when the Texans are great, it's when Nico is making the big plays. And, you could definitely tell, Xavier Hutchinson and Christian Kirk have better rapport with CJ at this point and as of late. Tommy Townsend with the punt, the former Chief. 60-yard punt there, and a return of about 14 here from Calvin Austin III, and that's going to put Aaron Rodgers at 1st down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 24 after the commercial break. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to get either team hitting 20 at this point. Maybe the maximum amount of points we're going to get is 17 for one and maybe 16 for the other. Could end up being that, so. And if you're watching Pittsburgh, again, they went to DK Metcalf early, in the game and kind of faded him. And I'm not sure if Freiermuth is out there. We haven't seen him get any type of looks if he is. Jonnu Smith obviously used to be something when he was on the Titans a few years ago. But it kind of feels like to me, if Pittsburgh is actually going to be able to move down the field, Rodgers needs to get Jaylen Warren in the flat, and they need to throw the ball to him because obviously running the ball, he's not being able to really get anything on that D-line. But if you get him in the flat in a screen pass, you can end up getting, 8, 10, 15, 20-yard chunks. And eventually that'll open up, the game for the other tight ends and receivers as you progress down the field. But again, I don't know if they're smart enough with Arthur Smith to realize that might be the only way to open the game up because what they're doing up to this point obviously has only, come to 2 field goals. And field goals are not going to be enough to win this game, you would think. .342 left in the third quarter, 7-6 Houston. Yeah, he had 2 really good catches early, but again, hasn't done a whole lot since. Rodgers going deep to Adam Thielen. There we go. Another option, even though he's old like Rodgers, they have something in common. They're kind of at the end of their careers, but that's a good pickup there. Nice job by Adam Thielen and Aaron Rodgers. 21-yard pass, first down, Steelers. There we go. And maybe that's where they need to go. Jaylen Warren in the flat and, go to Adam Thielen as long as he can catch the ball at that old age. Keep going to him. First down, Steelers. Yeah. Well, if you want a good matchup in the next round, you want Houston to win. Because if Pittsburgh makes it and they win the game, they're going to get absolutely throttled by New England. But if Houston wins, based on C.J. Stroud and, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter, they actually will have a chance to win the game and compete. Pittsburgh, to me, has 0 chance against New England. I don't care how good T.J. Watt and, the other defenders, Cameron Hayward, play. I just don't see enough out of Aaron Rodgers against that New England defense led by Vrabel. I don't see it. Rodgers looking, and Jonnu Smith. And that's going to be a loss of a yard going in the wrong direction. Second down and 11 at the Pittsburgh 44. If we're talking about matchups in the next round, we want to be able to see the best teams make the NFC, AFC championship game. And I think as far as entertainment purposes, Seahawks, Rams, and Patriots, Bills would be exactly what the NFL needs. If Denver ends up beating, the Bills, then obviously Denver and New England could be good as well. But obviously with the struggles with Bo Nix, that would be kind of a defensive-oriented game, lower scoring, not as much excitement. You get Josh Allen in the game, that brings the excitement. And I think that, Buffalo making the Super Bowl would be the best as far as NFL, is concerned. If we ended up getting Seattle, Buffalo, or the Rams at Buffalo, in my opinion, that would bring the most entertaining Super Bowl. Seahawks, Bills, or Rams, Bills. But we'll see if those teams can actually get there. And Rodgers sacked, loss of 9. And Danielle Hunter right there, but recovered by Pittsburgh and Mason McCormick. And that's going to be 4th down and 25 at the Pittsburgh 30. 12 noon. You know what time it is? Another sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. are going to get theirs. Again, the only duo on the D-line that have more than 10 sacks apiece. And good awareness by Mason McCormick, because that could have been a scoop and score or a fumble recovery there by Houston. Yeah, but again, it's the best D-line in football, so... And that's Corliss Waitman with the punt, 57 yards. Jalen Knoll with a 10-yard return, and that's going to be first down and 10 at the Houston 23. $129 left in the third quarter, 7-6 Texans. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. We got one touchdown and 2 field goals so far. Let's get some scoring here in the late third quarter, fourth quarter. Come on now. And we'll be doing the Spurs and the Thunder tomorrow. First NBA stream in 2026. Then we'll do the Kraken on Wednesday and Thursday. Friday we'll be off. Saturday and Sunday we'll do the NFL. And then Monday will be the Natties. So we'll be starting to sprinkle in a little bit of NBA, NHL starting tomorrow. And we'll do that for January and February, as well as a little bit of NASCAR as we wait for the baseball season to start. Stroud, short middle to Nico Collins, incomplete. And Nico Collins is hurt again. Joey Porter Jr., fantastic player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Nico Collins has met his match. Looked like Joey Porter Jr. was a little early there, but again, we haven't seen the flags come out that much here today. I wonder if he ended up getting a concussion there, hitting his head so hard on the turf. And again, when the Texans are great is when Nico is great with CJ. And again, when he's not a factor, you can tell. Like I said, it's not like they don't have other guys that can step up. Like, Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson and whatnot, but it doesn't give you the same type of big play opportunity. Another fumble. And that's the 5th fumble for the Houston Texans. Luckily, CJ is able to get on it there, but the quarterback snap connection has been absolutely horrific. And again, that was snapped early and hit him on the shoulder there, but they're definitely not on the same page. Crazy to see 5 fumbles, 2 lost, 3 recovered, 7-6 game. Defenses have been nice, but come on, let's play some football here. Shotgun set, CJ going deep to Christian Kirk. We know he can catch the ball. Beautiful catch. First down, Texans. And we saw Christian Kirk early in the game with one of these. And look at that throw by CJ Stroud. That's the throw that we saw when he was a rookie coming in that made us believe that he could be a top 10 quarterback moving forward. Great job by CJ Stroud. I love it. First down, Texans. And let's see if they can continue to go to Christian Kirk, because it kind of feels like Nico Collins is going to be a non-factor the rest of the game. Nice throw and nice catch. And that's going to be the end of the third quarter, 7-6 Houston. And after that throw, it kind of feels like they have the momentum and they'll have enough to win this game. It may not be by much. They might end up winning 14-13 or 14-9, but it kind of feels like they'll be able to get enough, even though neither team will get to 20, but again, defense wins games, defense wins championships, and it's been a definitely a sloppy first 3 quarters, but we got to be able to get at least 1 touchdown here in the fourth quarter by somebody. But we got the Spurs and the Thunder on tomorrow at 5 o'clock on NBC and Peacock. Wembanyama versus SGA, and that should be entertaining. And then obviously as we go and tap into the NHL, obviously on the Kraken for Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be able to see who they match up with. And so after we do the Spurs and the Thunder tomorrow, we're going to have the Kraken versus the Devils, Odin's favorite team. That'll be at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, Pacific. And then on Thursday, the Kraken play at the Boston Bruins there for Judah's team. So we'll see how the Kraken fare, on the road at the Devils and at the Bruins. It'll be a little bit of a test, but, Kraken have been playing pretty good hockey. And, again, if you have Prime, they have an exclusive deal with them. So I'll be watching those games on there and doing a few live streams. We have to be able to come up with some filler content, with some NBA, NHL, NASCAR, and WWE as we wait for baseball season. And again, hopefully those matchups end up being pretty good. We're going to the fourth quarter, 7-6, Houston. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on the dono train. Still looking for our first dono on the stream. Hopefully we'll get at least 1 or 2 before the stream ends. And we're looking for 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. I mean, all the games in the playoffs have been good besides last night's game. That was the first dud. Obviously we wanted, the Chargers to be able to put up a little bit more of a fight. And, so far today, just not enough offense for Pittsburgh and sloppiness on the offense for the Texans. But flag comes out. And that's going to be offensive holding there on the Texans by Titus Howard. So that Woody Marks run of 3 yards gets negated, and that's going to be first down and 20. Shotgun set. Woody Marks with the run off the right guard for about 7 yards. Patrick Queen, the former Raven, with the tackle. Second down and 13 at the Pittsburgh 39. Fourth quarter point differential, minus 42 for the Steelers. That's not going to win a game for you. Plus 78 for Houston. So we know fourth quarter ball is very good for Houston and the Denver Broncos. It's the quarter that they come up the biggest. Same thing with the Bears as of late. Scoring 25 in the fourth quarter to beat the Packers. Nico Collins carted off, going to the locker room. I hope he's okay, but probably has a concussion, I would assume. But has been a non-factor here today. I mean, unless it's something to do with his knee and his head, but shotgun set, CJ Stroud to Christian Kirk, and a nice 7-yard pass. 3rd down and 6 at the Pittsburgh 32. Oh, interesting. And again, we'll see, if Dante Moore comes back. Obviously, based on how he played, against Indiana, it would be a smart decision for him. I would rather have him come back and get more experience and have Raiola, say that he's at least going to commit to Oregon, and then we'll see if he sticks it out, in the next year or two. But he likes to bounce around. CJ Stroud, shotgun set, going deep to Jaden Higgins and complete. And when it looked like Houston was getting close to get more points on the board, the drive stalls again. And now it's 4th and 6 at the Pittsburgh 32. Bring out Kaimi Fairbairn and you should be able to get a 10-6 lead. No real reason for them to go for it. And kick is up and good. Nice kick by Kaimi Fairbairn. 10-6 Texan lead. Big 51-yard kick, but he has the moxie and the skill set to make that kick. I'm a defensive fan through and through, but again, when the games are sloppy and then there's not enough scoring on offense, even guys like me that like defense first and, O-line, D-line, defense, coaching, play calling, even for a guy like me, even though this is a defensive-oriented game, it ends up not being a good game, because again, you still want to be able to have good defense, but you want to be able to get points scored on offense, defense, and special teams. And, it's just been a sloppy game by Houston, and defenses have played well for each team, but overall, kind of a little bit of a dud, kind of like yesterday's game. Finally, New England was able to pull away and get the victory. But again, not enough offense in the game last night and not enough offense here, in this game with the Texans and the Steelers. But, again, the next round, you would assume it will open up a little bit more. But again, it would be another defensive battle with the Texans and Patriots. Could be another low-scoring game under 20. But again, with the Broncos and the Bills, you would assume that would be a little high-scoring. Same thing goes with the Seahawks and Niners, higher scoring, even with some good defense. And then the Rams and Bears should be high scoring, you would assume, to a certain degree, at least for the Rams. 13:07 left in the fourth quarter, 10-6, Houston. Been a field goal party so far for Kaimi Fairbairn and Chris Boswell. We've seen some good defensive plays by TJ Watt and Will Anderson, including Danielle Hunter. But again, I love defense, but man, let's get some points on the board. But if Buffalo doesn't make the Super Bowl, AFC, NFC championship games could be better than the Super Bowl. I mean, unless we end up getting Bills, Seahawks, or Bills, Rams, then I think that Super Bowl will be amazing. You know, you're going to get offense and defense and, a lot of eyeballs on the product. But again, if you get the Patriots or the Broncos or the Texans, I don't think it's going to be as good. Just not enough offense, from some of those teams. And I honestly think if Buffalo makes it, they would be the only team that could win the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks or the Los Angeles Rams. That's the only team I think that can keep pace. I mean, I know, Patriots, Broncos, and Texans have good defense, but can they score enough? That's the question. Shotgun set, Gainwell rushing off that left end with a 14-yard run. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 45. Move the chains. And we haven't been able to say that often here in this game either. But Stafford and Josh Allen in the Super Bowl would be sexy. Seattle would be sexy there as well, but we'll see. We'll see what team ends up being the best there in the NFC and the AFC. Shotgun set, Rodgers going deep to Calvin Austin III. Incomplete. Now, this is the type of game that you, even though he has drama, but George Pickens, if he was still on the Steelers, this would be the game that he could help the Steelers win with a big deep catch, or a screen pass and then taking it for 20 or 30 yards with yak yards after, and they just don't have it. You got DK Metcalf and a few others, but a lot of these guys are just not good enough. Austin there with the tip, but incomplete. Lassiter with the good coverage there on Calvin Austin III. That's a good question. I assume Kelsey retires and Kenyon Sadiq gets drafted to the Chiefs from the Oregon Ducks. I assume that's what will happen. And even if Kelsey doesn't retire, that would probably be where they go. Shotgun set, Gainwell off that left tackle, loss of 2. Third down and 12 at the Pittsburgh 43. And it's kind of the same thing for each team. You get one big play, and then the drive ends up stalling. One big throw, one big run, and then the drive stalls. And again, at some point, you need to be able to manufacture back-to-back first downs. And both teams are having a very difficult time being able to manufacture more than 1 or 2 first downs in consecutive order. Third down and 12, empty back. 3 wide receiver set, audible at the line for Rodgers. Shotgun set, they only bring 4, and they get to him. It's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. And they pick up the football, and they're about to score. Touchdown, Texans. Wow. Will Anderson Jr., baby. This game is over. And again, just like New England ended up pulling away last night against the Chargers, this one is over. No scenario whatsoever. Pittsburgh comes back. And again, defense wins games. Defense wins championships. This one is over. Nice job there by Will Anderson with the fumble. Recovered by Sheldon Rankins. And Rankins rumbling and a bumbling all the way down. Extra point is up by Kaimi Fairbairn. And again, Rankins up front, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. I mean, they got so many nice pieces. The best D-line in football ends up striking on Aaron Rodgers, pulling that helmet, pulling the body down. Great scoop and score. This one is over. And again, and this is the way that it should have went, because if Pittsburgh plays New England, they're going to get blown out. At least now, with the Houston Texans going into New England, they'll have a chance. They may not win, but we'll at least have a more fun, competitive game with C.J. Stroud on one side, even though the offense is kind of like now with Bo Nix. It's kind of hit or miss, but at least we know Denver's defense and Houston's defense, can obviously bring the heat. And then obviously New England, they got a good offense, defense, and special teams. So, New England's got a very well-rounded, overall team. And again, the only weakness for Buffalo is their run defense. They got Josh Allen, the best quarterback, Cook, arguably the best running back at this point in the year. And then you got a really good secondary, one of the best in the NFL for Buffalo. The only thing that they have an issue with is stopping the run. But even with that being said, Buffalo could still end up beating Denver, New England, or Houston and representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. It's a very special team that we've seen kind of go up and down throughout the year. But again, if you go against Josh Allen, good luck, because that's going to be a tough battle to win. And Kaimi Fairbairn there with the kick, 55 yards. 23-yard return by Kenneth Gainwell with a leaping maneuver there late on the run. And now it's going to be 1st down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 33. And, I just don't see any scenario of Pittsburgh coming back. Unless they get incredibly lucky on getting a touchdown and then they end up getting like a fumble for a touchdown and a pick six themselves. But we'll see. And we finally get Pat Freiermuth's name mentioned the first time in the broadcast. Another reason why they're not very good. Rodgers going deep to Pat Freiermuth. You've had Pat this whole game. And again, even when Kenny Pickett was playing, you saw Pat get looks. Why do they go to Jonnu Smith more to Pat Freiermuth? I feel, Pat is a better player, but again, doesn't get the opportunities with Aaron Rodgers. And again, 2nd down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 33. Sometimes you have to be able to know how to use your players, and Arthur Smith is a garbage OC for Pittsburgh. But you also have to realize what you got. You don't really have an RB1 after Najee left. Jaylen Warren is an RB2 and they faded the run, right? You don't really have a whole lot to work with offensively. You got DK, Calvin Austin the third. You got Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth, but you don't really call the right plays to get those guys going. Again, they can only do so much. And you got Kenneth Gainwell as well. So little check down. And Jaylen Warren finally getting a catch there. No huddle. Rodgers going deep to Pat Freiermuth. Maybe he got my message. And that's a nice catch there by Pat Freiermuth. It's kind of a shame they had to wait to the 4th quarter to get him the fucking ball. But threading the needle there. Great job by Pat Freiermuth. 1st down, Steelers. Move the chains. And just imagine if Pat Freiermuth ended up getting the ball in the first half. Maybe the game would be a little bit closer. Flag on the play. Too many men on the field, but that'll be declined. 1st down and 10 at the Houston 45. Uh-oh, it's 12 noon. You know what time it is? Time for a sack lunch. Yum, 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 yum. Rodgers sacked. Loss of 3 by Leki Fotu. 2nd down and 13 at the Houston 48. Shotgun set. Rodgers going deep to DK Metcalf. Incomplete. 3rd down and 13 at the Houston 48. I feel I could coach and coordinate or be like, some kind of, assistant, to, a high school, college, or NFL team, based off film and scheme and, player analysis and player development and whatnot. But, obviously my dream, and my goals are, here on YouTube and whatnot. So, but again, with the amount of football, that some of us watch, I feel like a lot of us can watch the game, but we don't see the game the same way. There's going to be certain people, that can see things that others can't, based off experience or just understanding the game and whatnot. But, I definitely feel if you've watched the, streams, with the Mariners or anything else, we can always come up with some ESP pretty frequently, or things that could work, but, sometimes these coaches and coordinators get a little bit too predictable, and Rodgers goes short middle to nobody, and that's going to be 4th down and 13 at the Houston 48. But again, lots of Madden played when I was young, lots of film, a lot of games, but again, just because you watch a lot of games doesn't mean you understand football or sports in general. I think that's why, you can get so many people arguing all the time, about college football and NFL. You can definitely tell, who's biased, for like, let's say the SEC thinking they're still good. And apparently, they're not, they're not the same as they used to be when they had, Nick Saban around and whatnot. So it definitely is a little bit more even in college football, and the Big Ten has taken over. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize the Big Ten is king, and they will be king moving forward. And again, you'll still get, some good teams coming out of, Georgia and Bama, and obviously LSU should end up joining the party with Lane Kiffin. And if he recruits well, they'll be better than Alabama. They'll be right there with Georgia, and probably at some point, maybe even better than Georgia. LSU might be the number one team in the SEC in a few years once Lane gets his guys, if he's willing to stay and he can recruit well, which he already got Levitt at quarterback as a transfer. So we'll see where it goes. But, I don't ever see the SEC being the same, dominant squad unless another Nick Saban comes around, or, Ryan Day leaves Ohio State and ends up going there to the SEC or something to kind of even out the playing field for recruiting, or Kirby Smart gets fired and then they steal Dan Lanning away from Oregon and then they get him to coach Georgia. Then if that happens, then you'll get maybe a little bit of a shift, but I'm hoping Lanning will stay at Oregon, and win at least a natty before he leaves back to, Georgia if he goes. But I'm hoping that he'll stay at Oregon for his whole career, but you just never know. First down and 10 at the Houston 13 after that Corliss Waitman punt of 35 yards. Fair caught by Jalen Knoll. And we got 9:29 left in the fourth quarter, 17-6 Texans. Like, sub, donate, comment, share. If you haven't smashed that like button yet, please do. Help us get to 100 likes, 100 on that dono train. And 5 to 15 subs. Let's get it, baby. Still looking for our first dono. We're in the fourth quarter. Hopefully we'll get some support before this one is over. 17-6 Houston. Shout out to my boy Brooks Beats with the best beats on YouTube. But people shouldn't really be that surprised, that the Steelers and Chargers shit the bed. I mean, those were the two worst teams, in the playoffs besides the Panthers. And at least the Panthers showed up, in their game against the Rams. So obviously people thinking the NFC South was the worst division in football. At least they ended up finishing the season strong and almost pulling off the miracle against the Rams. And, it's kind of crazy to think that the Panthers are, better than the Chargers and Steelers, but that's what it is, even with an 8-9 record. Facts. Woody Marks with a 2-yard run up the middle. Malik Harrison, the linebacker, with the Steelers with the tackle. Second down and 8 at the Houston 15. Appreciate you. We finally got someone to show some love, and it's greatly appreciated. Stacks, Racks with the little Cactus Jack. Bang, bang. We're at 20. 80 to go to hit the dono goal. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. One dono typically leads to another in a dono train like we had a couple days ago. Thank you so much. I appreciate you very, very much. CJ Stroud, short left to Jaden Higgins with a nice 9-yard gain. Patrick Queen, the former Raven, with the tackle, assisted by Clark as well. First down and 10 at the Houston 24. Hand off to Nick Chubb off that left guard for 2 yards. Black and Queen in there with the tackle. Second down and 8 at the Houston 26. Got about 8 minutes to go. Houston in firm control. Very sloppy game, but again, it shows you how dominant that D-line and their linebacking core and secondary is. And again, it'll be a better game against the New England Patriots with the Texans winning. Because again, if the Steelers somehow, some way were to win the game today, they would get absolutely obliterated by New England, in my opinion. So at least the Texans, will have a chance to pull off the upset if CJ plays well on the road. And again, this will be the first playoff win for Houston in their existence on the road ever. And, that'll feed off the momentum a little bit as they go in against New England, which will be a much tougher test. But Drake May and CJ Stroud, yeah, sign me up. That sounds sexy. Same thing with Bo Nix and Josh Allen. And then obviously as you go in the next one, well, you have Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold, and then Matthew Stafford and Caleb Williams. So as we get further and further to the divisional round and the NFC, AFC championship game, it's going to get funner and funner, knowing, how close certain teams are on making their dreams come true. 4-yard run there by Nick Chubb off that right tackle. Hurry up with a shotgun set with C.J. Stroud, short middle to Christian Kirk. Another big play, 33-yard pass from Stroud to Kirk. Eccles with the coverage, first down, Texans. And it looks like Houston is looking for another field goal or preferably another touchdown to pull away, just like New England did in their game in the fourth quarter against the Chargers and Justin Herbert. And they have to be happy that they have someone as talented as Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson at wide receiver and Dalton Schultz at tight end for CJ Stroud. Because again, if you we're a little thin after Nico Collins, then it would be a little bit closer of a game. But, Christian Kirk has always been a pretty good receiver, in his days in Jacksonville and now in Houston. So, definitely stepping up in the biggest way with the absence of Nico Collins. So, and Nico has been a little injury prone this year. So, you have to assume that, he may not be available, in the next game. I hope he is, but we'll see what the injury is, if it's a knee and a concussion or both. 2-yard run there by Woody Marks. Harmon with the tackle and the coverage. 2nd down and 8 at the Pittsburgh 35. But good for Christian Kirk, to be able to show that, hey, I might not be wide receiver 1, but when wide receiver 1 goes down, you can look at me and trust me that I can come up with big plays. And he's doing the same type of big play ability as Nico Collins did last year with CJ Stroud. Getting those catches of 30 yards and more and making big plays and moving the chains. Hand off to Nick Chubb up the middle for a 5-yard gain. Benton and Harrison with the tackle for the Steelers. 3rd down and 3 at the Pittsburgh 30. Shotgun set, Chubb up the middle for a nice 9-yard gain. First down, Texans. Move the chains. 1st down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 21. Good teams run the ball when they have the lead. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize what they need to do to win. When you are ahead in the second half, you run the ball, you bleed the clock. Obviously, you're going to have to dink and doink and throw the football a little bit, but especially when you have a 17-6 lead, you don't need to be slinging it on every down. You can kind of bleed the clock down a little bit here. And they've been getting good runs by Woody Marks and Nick Chubb. And again, those guys are nowhere near being as good as Joe Mixon when he's healthy, but good enough to win against Pittsburgh here tonight. Yeah, well, they have the best defensive line and one of the top 2 defenses overall. And really the question mark isn't on that side of the ball. The question mark is CJ Stroud in the offense and if the offense can produce enough to win games. But they do have the best D-line in football, and it shows. But if you go against a better offensive line than Pittsburgh's, like New England, it may not be as big of a factor, in that next game. So, you assume that, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. are still going to get sacks on Drake May, but will it be enough to beat them? That's the question, because New England's got a more well-rounded team, and they're going to be at home. So, second down and 11. Nick Chubb, 6-yard run. So we got a face mask here on Pittsburgh. And now everything going downhill for the Steelers. And defense wins games and defense wins championships unless you're the best quarterback in the league like Josh Allen. He's the one that can buck the trend and beat Denver, beat Houston, or beat New England. But there's no one else that can do what he does. They got the best secondary. Run defense stinks. They got the best running back at this point with Cook. So, again, it's kind of like that weird situation where, defense wins games, defense wins championships, unless we're talking about the Bills and Josh Allen. And again, if they play well or the game is close and they have the ball, definitely Buffalo can beat any of the teams that are left, Houston, New England, or Denver. But again, we will see if they can beat Denver on the road first before we start talking about that. But that's kind of the anomaly, where that one team can kind of buck the trend. And then obviously I don't see the Bears beating the Rams and the Niners without Kittle beating Seattle. And that should be very sexy to see who's going to be the better team, the Seahawks or the Rams. And again, hopefully we end up getting one of those two teams. And again, I think Buffalo would be the most entertaining team in the Super Bowl as far as the AFC side. No disrespect against the Texans or New England or the Denver, but we'll see how it all plays out. False start. And that's going to be Woody Marks off that right guard. Touchdown, Texans. And this one is over. Already was over when it was 17-6, but now it's officially over 24-6 Houston. But again, if you end up being a 6 seed or a 7 seed, you ain't doing shit. Again, not against these teams this year, NFC or AFC. All right, take care, brother. Extra point is up and good by Ka'imi Fairbairn. 24-6 Houston. So again, we had 4 amazing games to start off the wild card weekend, and the last 2 have been a little disappointing, for Charger fans and Steeler fans and NFL fans. But again, you can't expect too much out of a 6 and 7 seed. And thankfully, the Panthers, who looked like maybe they were the worst team in the playoffs, they showed up and they looked a hell of a lot better than the Chargers and the Steelers. So even though people thought the NFC South was the worst, because they had an 8-9 record, they played a hell of a lot better than Pittsburgh and the Chargers did here in the playoffs. .338 left here in the fourth quarter. Ka'imi Fairbairn with the kick, 66 yards. And Kenneth Gainwell with a nice 30-yard return. First down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 29. Try to have the right balance of offense and defense. And obviously for some of these teams, they just don't have enough offensive firepower, in the playoffs to be able to keep going. And that might be the thing that ends up costing Denver against Buffalo. Just not enough offensive firepower with Bo Nix and his weapons. Not enough there. Unless the defensive single-handedly shuts down Josh Allen, but I highly doubt that that'll happen for 4 quarters, so... Shotgun set, Rodgers, short middle to DK Metcalf, and complete. Second down and 10 at the Pittsburgh 29. Good defense there by Autry, batting that down. Shotgun set, Rodgers, short left to Kenneth Gainwell, Incomplete. And this is what happens when you end up getting down. You don't have a balanced offense. You don't run the football, and then you start passing on every down. You don't have really good weapons to throw to, and then you just start getting sacked and throwing bad, interceptions or bad incompletions. And, the game has got away from Pittsburgh, obviously, here in the second half. You can't even fucking complete a screen pass to Kenneth Gainwell. You know it's going bad. That's up to Aaron, if he wants to come back, next year or not. I'm not really sure what his contract status is with Pittsburgh, if it's only for this year or beyond and whatnot. But I imagine if he wanted to come back, it's not like he doesn't have any skills. I mean, he could still play in the league for maybe another year or two. I don't know on what level, but I mean, he's not a top 10 quarterback, but at this point in his career, he's still probably a top 20 to top 25 quarterback. He's still, capable of moving the football here and there. So I mean, if you put Aaron Rodgers on like a team like the Lions with all those weapons, I mean, I imagine he would still be able to, move the football to a certain degree. Not that he would go there, but you know what I mean. Rodgers short middle to Kenneth Gainwell, 5-yard pass, 4th down and 5 at the Pittsburgh 34. And look at that, pick 6 by the Texans. Horrible effort here by Pittsburgh late. And again, they have just given up on their team, and that was embarrassing. Kalen Bullock, the safety. And again, once you end up throwing the pick, at least tackle the guy and make sure he doesn't score. And again, now this game is getting very, very ugly. What a beautiful pick 6 there. Terrible effort by the Steeler defense. I would be ashamed. There's no way in hell he should have scored a touchdown off that pick based on where he caught that ball. Horrible effort. Probably the worst effort I've seen after an interception all year. There is no excuse for that poor effort by Pittsburgh. I mean, everyone for Houston is hustling. Pittsburgh is just standing around. That is nasty. Nice job by Houston. After that pick 6, that might be the last game for Aaron Rodgers after that. Crazy, the Texans had 5 fumbles and they still ended up scoring 30 and winning by 24. Unbelievable. Defense wins games, defense wins championships, unless you're playing Josh Allen. But, this will be a better matchup with the Texans and the New England Patriots, and it'll be must-see TV. Broncos and Bills will be great. Seahawks, Niners, we'll see how that ends up. It should be close probably in the first half. Seahawks will pull away in the second half. And then Rams, Bears, you would assume, Bears will hang with them defensively for a little, and the Rams should be able to pull away pretty convincingly, you would assume. Extra point is up. A line drive kick. No good. Yeah, but even if the Ravens would have made the playoffs, they still would have gotten their ass kicked too. They're not good enough defensively. And again, yeah, you got Lamar and you got Zay Flowers and you got Derrick Henry. They would have been able to put up more than 6, but you're not beating Houston. It would have been more entertaining with Baltimore making it. I would agree with that. If Baltimore would have made the kick, with that rookie kicker, it would have been a more entertaining game than this. Because you got to assume that Lamar would have got at least 1 touchdown in this game, throwing or running or both, and Derrick Henry probably would have had a good chance to get at least 1 touchdown, and and then Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, and company would be able to get something, you would assume. But the big difference is the defense. The Ravens' defense is nowhere near being the same after McDonald has left to be the coach of the Hawks. It went from being top 5 to bottom 10. So. Jaime Fairbairn, 65-yard kick, touchback. And yeah, this might be Rodgers' last game as a pro. But again, you can't expect Aaron Rodgers to be able to play some amazing game with barely anybody to hand the ball off to. Or, you got Gainwell, right? And you got Jalen Warren, who are RB2, RB3s, right? You got DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin III. That's not good. Like, if they had George Pickens, maybe they would have been able to get at least one touchdown, but again, you just don't have enough. You got Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth, but you don't get them the ball because their fucking offensive coordinator sucks ass. And, so again, it's, Rodgers being old and, not really having enough. And that might be the issue that the Broncos have, in their game. Their defense is elite, but does Bo Nix have enough, with Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, and RJ Harvey to compete, against Buffalo at home? We'll find out. But that was embarrassing effort on the defense by Pittsburgh after the pick six. There's no way that, he should have scored there. Yeah, but Rodgers has plenty of money. He doesn't really need to play. I feel kind of at the end of his career, he wasn't really playing for the love of the game. He was playing for the paycheck to have more money with his, Hollywood friends. All right, we're at the 2-minute warning, 30-6, Houston. At least the first 4 games were lit. The last 2 have been a little bit of a dud, but, again, 6-7 seeds are not going to win. And they definitely didn't show up on the AFC side. At least Carolina Panthers fucking showed up, and they made it fun and entertaining. This will be the first Monday night loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers in their history, and the Texans their first win on the road as an organization overall. So congratulations to Houston, but it gets very tough in the next round where you go against the most well-rounded team in the AFC in the New England Patriots, and you're going to be on the road again. And I would assume that one will be much closer. It could be a defensive battle early in the first half in that one as well. And then we'll find out, who's going to be the better quarterback, CJ Stroud or Drake May. And hopefully Nico Collins will be available, because if he's not available, that's going to be extra tough and a lot more pressure on Christian Kirk and the others. And they do have some lockdown corners on that opposite side, like Christian Gonzalez for New England. So, that New England defense flies around. Yeah, but, even with Aaron Rodgers, not having a whole lot of weapons around him, he's better than Kenny Pickett, So, again, it's not like they've been able to find Big Ben, Big Bens don't grow on trees, but, again, Rodgers is better than Kenny Pickett ever was, so. And a handoff to Jalen Warren, 2-yard run. And that's going to be 4th down and 2 at the Pittsburgh 43. Yeah. But again, you don't need to be elite to play in the NFL. You just need to, be try to be like one of the top, obviously there's 32 teams, you just got to be a top 32 quarterback. So. And even though Rodgers is old as shit, he's still better than a few of the quarterbacks in the league. Not a lot, but a few. 4th down and 2. Screen pass. And First down and 10 there. No huddle, shotgun set. Jalen Warren off that left side. 12-yard run. First down and 10 at the Houston 43. Move the chains. We got Mason Rudolph in there. And Mason Rudolph is fucking terrible too. Shotgun set. Hand off to Jalen Warren off that right side. And the clock winds down, and that is it. Final score, Texans 30, Pittsburgh Steelers 6. And the Chargers and Steelers did not show up, but I don't think anyone really anticipated that they would. And then we have games at Saturday and Sunday, Bills and Broncos to start it off, and hopefully I'll have enough energy to do both on both days. Shout out to Reflect for helping us not get a goose egg on the Dono train. I appreciate you very, very much. I'm going to go on a nice long walk here with the Paisley Pup. And again, we'll be live tomorrow with the Spurs and the Thunder doing our first NBA game in 2026. We did a couple Blazer games in the fall, and so we'll do that for tomorrow. Kraken on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll take Friday off. Saturday and Sunday, we'll do the NFL playoffs, and then Monday will be the Natty with the Hurricanes and the Hoosiers. So I hope you guys enjoyed the broadcast. I love you guys and I appreciate you guys very much. Final score, Texans 30, Pittsburgh Steelers 6. And I got one question for you. Who you know talks sports like us? Your boy Ryan, Northwest Sports Fanatics, and I'm out. Gang.